Hoy es tu momento de crecer, es tu momento de crear y de reinventarte. IBI es parte de tu equipo y trabajamos contigo para apoyarte y lograr lo inimaginable en tu organización. Apoyamos a los mejores líderes, a los que han elegido darlo todo por su equipo, por sus sueños, por su mundo. IBI es tu aliado. Elige la felicidad.
Hola, mucho gusto, bienvenidos todos, bienvenidas todas. Nos da muchísimo gusto estar con ustedes la noche de hoy. Les agradecemos mucho que se hayan hecho el espacio para conectarse con nosotros el día de hoy. Y antes de presentarme y de presentar a nuestro gran invitado, me gustaría decirles que contamos con traducción simultánea. Ustedes pueden elegir el idioma de su preferencia, haciendo clic en el mundito o donde dice traducción, para que puedan ustedes justamente elegir si quieren la traducción al español. Yo voy a estar hablando en español y en inglés. Mi nombre es Arlen Solodkin y me da muchísimo gusto estar aquí con ustedes. Soy directora del Instituto de Bienestar Integral. Me dedico justamente al campo de la psicología positiva, trabajando con personas, con organizaciones, y tengo el gran placer de haber conocido al doctor Ben-Shahar hace 8 años, cuando tomé justamente una certificación en psicología positiva con él. Y actualmente, y por los últimos 8 años, he estado colaborando con él, trayendo al mundo de habla hispana los programas que él ha creado. También nosotros creamos programas dentro de nuestro propio instituto. Y actualmente soy profesora en el certificado en estudios de la felicidad, así como en la maestría en estudios de la felicidad que ha diseñado Ben-Shahar, que es uno de los proyectos más importantes de su vida, igual que el certificado. Y bueno, es un gran honor para mí poder estar hoy al lado de él con ustedes, platicando de temas muy interesantes. Pero me gustaría presentarles al doctor Ben-Shahar. Es un líder mundial en estudios de la felicidad. Creo que después de Aristóteles y algunos otros más, Ben-Shahar es realmente alguien que está traduciendo la ciencia de la felicidad a todos los ámbitos de la vida y a todos los ámbitos científicos, y aterrizando también estos conocimientos de formas muy prácticas. Es autor de muchísimos libros que han sido traducidos en decenas de idiomas. Es director del Happiness Studies Academy y bueno, trabaja en múltiples proyectos ayudando verdaderamente a crear conciencia y ayudando a que la gente pueda elevar su nivel de vida, a que las organizaciones alcancen su más alto potencial y a que el mundo sea un mundo de mayor bondad, de mayor alegría, y donde la gente se tome la felicidad muy en serio, porque la felicidad es cosa seria. Así que, Tal, it's such an honor for us to have you here.
It's great to be here, Arlen, and hi, everyone. Wonderful to see you here.
Thank you so much. I have to say to the world that your commitment to your work is incredible, because Tal is currently on the other side of the world. For him, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. And when I said, Tal, maybe, you know, what should we do about it? Because he had an unexpected trip. He said, let's go for it. So I really, really appreciate your commitment. It shows all the time, and I really appreciate it, Tal.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure. It's so meaningful for me to be here that actually I'd forgotten what time it was until you reminded me.
Yeah, I figured that out. So thank you anyway. So, Tal, you know, I was very interested in offering this webinar because we are beginning our journey this year. You know, we are again setting our priorities, setting up our goals. And, you know, oftentimes we forget about what are the goals that we're setting. And I've been thinking, you know, why does this happen? Why do we focus so much on the present moment? Why do we seek sometimes, you know, immediate pleasure? And we forget about what's really meaningful in the long run. For example, we often want to do a very important project and we never find the time to do it. But then we find a mini series in Netflix and it takes only 1 or 2 hours per day, and we somehow are able to find time to watch the, you know, the series, but we forget about the important project that we set out to do in our New Year resolutions. So why do you think this happens to us?
You know, we're complicated beings. We have so many natural inclinations that sometimes conflict with one another. So, for example, on the one hand, we do have the part in us that plans for the future. But on the other hand, we have a part of us that wants immediate gratification. And both are important. The question is when we use what. And what has happened over the past, 200 years, even more so over the past 20 years, is that our world and what we have available to us has been distorted. And I will give you an example. We have a natural need and a want and an inclination for sweet things, because sweet things in nature are generally good for us. It's good for us to eat a tomato. We find it sweet. It's good for us to eat an orange or a banana, that we find it sweet. It feels good. But today we have sweet things available to us in an artificial way, not the natural things. And our bodies can't tell the difference between the two. And they seek them, and we eat them, and we eat too much of them. Now, if all that was available to us were tomatoes and bananas and oranges, that would be great, having a sweet tooth. But today, when we have so many sweetened drinks and we have so much chocolate with sugar available to us, well, our bodies crave it and we have too much of it. It's the same thing with those shows on television that are available to us. It's actually good for us to want to understand things about the world and stories about our tribe. These stories, these gossips are important for us to know in order to navigate the world. But now we have 200 of these programs available to us. We can just click and watch it and get that stimulation in our brain. And that makes us want it, and it makes us forget other things that may be more important for us in the long term. So it's a natural want, a natural inclination that has gone extreme, that is pulling us inwards, preventing us from doing the healthy thing, whether it's in food, whether it's in media consumption, in life in general.
Yeah, and don't you think it's like we tend to minimize our decisions' future impact in the present moment? We don't realize what we're putting off. And, sometimes I hear people, and it has happened to me, I've been wanting to write a book and I start, and then I start paying attention to solving immediate situations that come up or things that become urgent, apparently. And I forget about the big important project in my life. And I really wanted to take the time to address this, because I think it happens often to a lot of us,
Arlene, Stephen Covey, who wrote the wonderful book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, made this distinction that you were just talking about between the urgent and the important. And once again, our natural inclination is to deal with what is urgent. Because, you know, if a lion is standing in front of me, you know, it's urgent that I should run rather than think about, you know, my life goal at this moment. So that's an important inclination that has saved many people's life. It's an important instinct to deal with the urgent. But, you know, 5,000 years ago, when this lion was in front of our ancestors, we didn't have technology and we didn't have the complexity of modern life, and we didn't have so much information. So there weren't as many urgent things to deal with that could literally fill our life as a whole. So doing what is urgent before what is important is an important instinct, but not when we have 1,000 urgent things and our whole year can go by without doing one important thing.
Yeah, and I think that's also very much related to our tendency to save energy. You know, human beings, we tend to save energy, or all living things, living organisms, because we want to store the energy to use it in the future in case we are in deep need. So we tend to do activities or to choose activities that don't require as, you know, as much effort as other, you know, as other activities. Even though, for example, research says that pursuing a meaningful goal and doing something that it's more difficult, where you have to put more effort, is much better for us, because it really fulfills something inside of us, our need to really feel accomplished, our need to grow. But still, we want to save energy, and we end up choosing activities that require the minimum effort oftentimes, and then we again forget about those important things that we set to do in January. So that's why we're talking about that, not today.
Yeah, no, I think, again, this is such an important point that really has to do with the same general idea, and that is, in the past, we had to conserve energy because we used to walk a lot during the day, whether it's hunt, whether it's gather, whether it's move from place to place. So we needed every ounce of energy that we could save. But we didn't have the luxuries of modern life. You know, today we literally can stay in our place and, you know, click and have food delivered to us, have all the luxuries that our ancestors couldn't even imagine delivered to us without work. You know, you didn't need to tell a person living thousands of years ago to work hard. They had to work hard in order to survive. They didn't have the luxuries that we have today. Well, these luxuries are a double-edged sword. They're a wonderful thing on the one hand, but on the other hand, they can also hurt us if we don't do enough, if we don't work hard enough. Yeah. Again, because of a natural inclination to conserve energy, but an unnatural reality where things are available to us potentially very easily.
Yeah, so just this morning, actually, you were one of the first persons I saw this morning, besides, you know, my husband, and you'll be one of the latest person that I will see tonight. But this morning we had a class for the Masters in Happiness Studies, and you mentioned actually that, you know, most of us would enjoy much more to have a gourmet dinner or a homemade, you know, cooked food for our lunch or dinner as well. But we tend to order fast food and get, you know, something that's quick and easy to get, because the time that it takes to prepare such food, you know. So it is related to effort again.
Very much so, very much so. You know, the example is with fast food, it's immediate, it's quick. However, how much joy it gives us is relatively limited. Whereas with a gourmet meal, we have to invest a lot of time making it, preparing it, again, unless we go to a good restaurant, of course, but we have to spend time making it, and only then do we can we enjoy it. So yes, more effort, but at the same time, more long-term benefits. And there are other examples. For instance, let's think about music or a book. You know, there is music that's easy to enjoy. You know, we connect to it very quickly, or a book that's easy to read and we enjoy it. You know, in a novel or you know, a story. Whereas on the other hand, we have much more complicated music. You know, maybe classical music, or maybe, and this is the context I was talking about this morning, we were reading Aristotle. It's very difficult text. However, the point is that if you invest time in it, if you put effort into it, then the benefits that you will gain are major, are significant, perhaps much more so than an easy read or than easy music, but it takes effort. And sometimes our long-term enjoyment is in direct correlation with the amount of effort we put in. Now, I'm not against fast food, and I'm not against easy fun music or an easy fun read. These are pleasurable and enjoyable. At the same time, we shouldn't ignore and forego the things in life that do require more effort, that do take a longer time for us to learn and enjoy.
Absolutely. And, you know, it is important for us to think about this because we tend to make irrational choices. And in order to really keep up with the goals that we set for ourselves, it is important to become consciously aware of these biases and inclinations, these tendencies to go offline, you know, the tendency we seek immediate pleasure, so we forget about the meaningful things. We try to save energy, so we choose easy over difficult tasks. And one thing that has captured my attention quite a lot, Tal, I don't know exactly what term would you use in the US, but in Spanish, we have something that is called gasto hormiga, which really is something, it's translated as ant expenses, like those daily purchases that we allocate in minor things, such as coffee, soda, snacks, you know, that we tend, for example, sometimes we want to pursue something that is very important and meaningful to us. For example, in my case, writing a book. In somebody else's case, it might be traveling, or for somebody else might be joining the wonderful certificate in happiness studies. And we postpone it because we say, you know, I don't have the money to do this. And I found some interesting data about it, because Conducef, for example, which is a financial agency in Mexico, says that ant expenses, el gasto hormiga, can represent more than 12% of a person's annual income. In USA Today, for example, they said that Mexicans invest up to $1,600 a month in these small expenditures. And you know, they were saying, you know, how, for example, in Argentina, they spend around $177 a month. And they were saying that in Chile, it is about $836 a month. And in the US, it goes up to $18,000 a year. So people are complaining, you know, I'm not able to do this trip. I'm not able to join this program. I'm not able to to invest in, in a mortgage or in car insurance, but without knowing, they are really going out and spending all that money in something that really is not a priority for them at all. So there's nothing wrong with enjoying a few luxuries, but at the end of the day, when you are postponing some of the most important projects in your life, then we have a problem.
Yeah, so I love this idea. I don't know what the equivalent is in English, but the way I see it is that most of us are not aware of the sum of or the additive nature of small expenses. And it's expenses in terms of money. How much money do you spend every day on those little things? The exact same idea, to my mind, applies to time, because we don't realize, okay, so I'm only spending, I'm just, spending 30 minutes procrastinating, putting aside or mindlessly going through news. But, you add up those 30 minutes a day and you have, more than 3 hours a week, and you have, more than 150 hours a year. You know what you can do in 150 hours? A lot. That's days upon days upon days. And what if we turn that around and say, okay, I'm going to take those small sums of money or those small amounts of time and invest it in something that is meaningful to me. And again, this is a great time to do it. We're in the beginning of the year. So put aside, I don't know, these dollars that I would put into something that I don't really need, but do it day in and day out. And say, okay, I'm going to put 30 extra minutes in that gourmet meal. That's something that is good for me, learning something new. Again, whether it's Aristotle, whether it's gardening or cooking, something that is meaningful to me, doesn't matter what. And that adds up. And as a result of it, my year as a whole, my life as a whole will become so much more meaningful.
Yeah.
So turning that around from having those meaningless, perhaps, unnecessary, perhaps, expenses, whether it's of money, whether it's of time, and putting it into something meaningful and important.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about some ideas of how to do this at the end. I'm just watching that somebody in the chat was saying that he had the opportunity to collaborate with a transnational organization and to rescue one of their centers by reducing this expenditure. We as organizations, we often tend to underestimate how much money we spend on things that we don't really need as an organization. And oftentimes, by directing that investment into a project that is worth our effort and time and money, we can even save our operations. So that's incredible. That's an incredible example. So yeah, so I wanted to touch upon two more ideas that sometimes come in the way of our making our dreams come true, our projects become a reality. And one cognitive bias is called the status quo bias, which is our desire to keep things as they are. We might complain, and you have a wonderful story about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. We might complain every day about the lunch we have. We might complain every day that we're unhappy, that something is not working well for us, that we hate our job. And still, we find every evidence to keep us in the status quo, to stay where we are, and to really not pay the price of change, because change requires a lot of effort. So I don't know if you have anything to share about this stuff.
Yeah, Arlene, maybe I can share the story about the peanut butter, because I think it is an important one. So it's a story told in a wonderful book called the Path of the Peaceful Warrior, and in the book, the story is told about this individual. Let's call him John, who every day, he's a constructions worker. He works in building, and every day he comes to work, and every day at 12 o'clock they break for lunch, and he takes out his lunchbox and he looks at this food and he says, "Oh no, not peanut butter sandwich again." And every day, he opens up his lunchbox. "Oh no, not peanut butter sandwich again." And eventually one of his co-workers says to him, "John, stop complaining already. Just ask your wife to make you another sandwich." To which John responds, "My wife? I'm not married. I make my own sandwiches." And so we go throughout our days very often making our own sandwiches. And yet we complain about them because we forget that much of the reality that we live, we create for ourselves. Not all of it. And of course, some of our reality is a result of external circumstances, but a lot of it we create. And what we need to do is remember that we can change things, and we need to take a step back and think about, what are the things in my life that I can change? What are the things in life that I cannot change, that is outside of my control? And learning to distinguish between them is crucial for our well-being.
Yeah, and that is related to one question that Romeo is asking: how do you identify what is really important to us? Because in order not to wear ourselves out with the urgent.
That is something that I was thinking about a lot. And what's the difference between, say, today and the past? And one of the things is that today we have more options, and, we are exposed to more information today in a day than most people were exposed to in a lifetime. Because people's lifetime usually included, a very specific environment, specific place. Things didn't change much in our village or in our cave or in our surrounding. Today, just on the web, on the internet, walking down Main Street, we're exposed to so much information. So that's one difference. But there is another difference that's related to how much we're exposed to, and that is we're a lot busier today. We have very little downtime. In the past, people worked hard. It's not easy collecting food from the field or chasing after an animal or running away from an animal. That takes a lot of effort. But then they also had a lot of downtime where they would sit around the fireplace with their tribe, with their friends, with their families, and just hang out. Or they would have, hours and hours just in the field waiting for that animal to come so that they could hunt it. There was a lot of downtime. Today, we're on all the time. We have no time to think. And when we experience what Daniel Gilbert and others call cognitive busyness, we tend to make poor decisions because we react to what's immediately in front of us. We don't take a step back and reflect. And we need those reflections, because it's when we reflect that we are more likely to make the right long-term decisions. So we need to do it artificially today. We need to switch off from technology, create what I call islands of sanity in our lives. And during those times to think about, okay, what do I want to do with my life? Where do I want to spend my time? And to make these decisions in advance. Just like, if you're hungry and you go into the supermarket, you will buy way too much food, and you will also usually buy unhealthy food. Because right now you're hungry, you need to fill this need, this urge. It's urgent. It's an urge. However, if you sit back and you say, before I go into the supermarket, I'm going to decide what food we actually need as a family, what food I want to be at home, and you make that list. You go into the supermarket, you will buy much healthier food, much better food in the right quantity. In other words, you will make wiser decisions because you didn't make it urgently when you had the urge. You made it before when you could reflect and look at the big picture.
Yeah, that's actually so important. So I think summarizing a little bit what you said before going to the next point, it's really very important to take time. We often also underestimate the amount of effort it takes to do what we said to do. So it comes January and we have 100 or 10 or 15 goals, and we feel so powerful and full of energy. We want to do them all. So it's important to, and I remember an exercise that you have taught us, that is, what's real, make a list of what's really important for you. And then from that list, choose what is really, really important. And then from that list, choose what is really, really, really important until you get to the 1 or 2 important goals that you really are committed to. And then, you have to make time to see, how am I going to achieve these goals? When, to be specific, to set up a time frame, to be very conscious about those details. And Gabriel Ottington says, for example, think even about the obstacles that might come in your way, so that you know how you can overcome those obstacles when they arise. Because it's easier to have some alternative plans in place before you just drop it and forget about the goal in absolute terms.
Yeah, it's zooming in on the things that are really, really, really important for us can make all the difference between doing something that is meaningful to not doing anything at all. Because we think that when we have those long lists, well, this is all that I want to do. These are, valuable goals for me. But if we have too many of them, our cognitive system quite literally collapses, and we end up doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you use a very simple example. Let's say you want to move bricks from point A to point B because you want to build a house, and you say, I'm going to move all the bricks from one place to the place where I need, because I want to build a house. It matters to me. And you try to lift them all and nothing happens, and they'll just stay there and you'll do nothing. But if you say, okay, so I'm going to move them, 2 by 2, it's going to take you a while, but it's realistic. You're actually going to do it. So rather than trying to do too much and doing nothing, let's do it one step at a time, or one goal or 2 goals at a time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer. Yeah. And also, you talk about reminders, because sometimes we even forget what those important projects in our lives are. So we can also have some reminders, saying, remember, this was very meaningful to you, and to keep us going. And
yes. If I can say something about reminders, Arlen, because reminders can make the difference between whether or not we do something. Now, reminders can come in the form of a note on our wall. It can come in the form of a screensaver on our screen. It can come in the form of a bracelet, which we wear, which I do as a reminder. It can come socially, so that my partner or my friend or my colleague will remind me and I will remind her or him. But having reminders is important because even the most trivial and obvious things that are important to us, we often forget. You know, for all of us on this call, I bet you being kind to other people is important, is meaningful. And yet, so many of us, so much of the time, forget to be kind and generous to other people. And sometimes even this thing, I mean, you would think, I don't need a reminder to be kind. I'm a nice person. We do. Because sometimes we're very busy and we have a lot of urgent things, and then we forget to be kind. You know, not now, but maybe 3 months ago, I wore this same bracelet as a reminder to be kind and gentle to my children. Why? Because I was traveling a lot. And I was so busy and I had so much work that once in a while, when, you know, my kids, came to me and talked to me, I put them off. I didn't have time for them. I wasn't kind. I wasn't the kind of father that I wanted to be. And I caught myself doing it. And I said, hey, wait a minute. Remember what's most important to you. And this was a reminder of my priorities. Be gentle, kind, patient with my children. And within a day or two, I was there already, but I kept it on for 30 days because it takes time for a reminder to turn into a ritual. And what comes between a reminder and a ritual is repetition. In other words, doing it over time. These are, by the way, what I call the 3 R's of change. Reminders, this or the screensaver or other people or the sign on the wall. Reminders, repetition, doing it over and over again. And finally, it becomes a ritual, the 3rd R.
Thank you so much for this, Tal. And, you know, the title of the webinar was, you know, the net value, you know, of happiness. And we know that scientifically there are many benefits to being happy, you know, like you have better relationships. There are some studies that say, you know, you can earn more money because happy people tend to have more raises in their salaries or better opportunities at work, are happier with their lives and with their marriages. They have better health, they live longer. I mean, there are many benefits. But another bias that I wanted to talk about in terms of cognitive bias has to do with the availability bias, the human tendency to rely on information that it's available, easily available. And we live in a world, Tal, that oftentimes profits and has been accustomed to sharing all bad news about humans around the world, you know? Mm-hmm. We tend to talk so much about bad intentions and corruption and how we do, you know, evil to one another. And we talk about so many negative aspects of humanity. And because of the quantity of this information, we sometimes take it on as if it was our own beliefs, as if they were our own beliefs, without really taking the time to digest the information and to actually see, you know, is this really the world that I'm living in? I have never experienced a robbery in my life, or I have never experienced war, or I don't see harsh people everywhere in my daily encounters. Why do I take this information for granted? And the problem in terms of happiness, or in relation to happiness, is that in this apparently cruel and lonely an individualistic world, we tend to see happiness as something that is superficial, as something that is not rooted in humans, and we see it really as, you know, the cherry on top of the ice cream, instead of as the ice cream, because it can be the ice cream itself, you know. Yeah. So, you know, this bias, this cognitive bias really induces in human beings fear, induces you know, lack of trust in one another, and that sometimes becomes a barrier from us really pursuing what is good for us: kindness, generosity, and happiness.
Yeah. You know, Arlen, you're spot on, because what we see, what we're exposed to day in and day out, literally, is bad news. You know, you open the you know, the social media, you open the news feed, you know, television, what you see is bad news. And then the message that our mind is getting all the time, around the clock, is the world is a bad place. You can't trust people. You need to be on the lookout all the time. And as a result of that, we become pessimistic. As a result of it, we become afraid. As a result of it, we become unhappy. And when we tell others, oh no, actually I'm optimistic, or actually I'm happy, what is the immediate response? Oh, that's detached from reality. So people today equate pessimism with realism and optimism with detachment, when in fact, optimism is realism. Why? Because as you pointed out, there are many more people, no, it's not even close, many more people in the world doing good deeds, helping others, than there are people hurting others. Now, that doesn't mean we need to ignore those who hurt others. That doesn't mean we need to ignore what is bad in reality. We need to, and we need to try and fix that, of course. At the same time, we needn't ignore the good acts, the good deeds, the good people, the generosity, the kindness, the love that is all around us and within us. In other words, we need to be realistic. And when we are realistic, we automatically become optimistic. And as a result of it, not just happier, but also more generous, kinder, more successful, more productive, more creative, physically healthier. All the benefits of happiness, Arlen, that you mentioned. And we get there by, once again, taking a step back and asking ourselves, so what is reality truly? What does it truly include? Of what does it comprise? And when we understand that there is much more good than evil, much more kindness than harshness, much more love than hate, then we create a different relationship with reality. We have different ideas about reality, and therefore we experience it differently, and therefore we act differently. Because in a kind and generous reality, we're much more likely to reciprocate, to respond with kindness and generosity.
Yeah, and you know that the big price of taking those beliefs or those actions that we see in the news and you know, all around, and making them our own, is that in that process, many of us resign to the pursuit of happiness, which is inherent to humans and to a good life. So I am very happy to touch upon this topic, and I think before we go to, I know it's very late for, or very early for you, so we're gonna be closing, you know, on time. But I just wanted, before we take one or two questions, Tal, I wanted for you to share, is this the reason why you created the certificate and the master's in happiness studies? I know there was even at some point some criticism about, why are you calling this a master's in happiness studies or a certificate in happiness studies? But is this why you created these programs?
It's the two things that we talked about today were the reasons, the primary reasons for me starting these programs. Again, whether it's the certificate program or the master's degree. The first one was about helping people, in a sense, return to nature, to their nature, to the healthy elements of their nature. And again, whether it's in terms of practices, what they do day in and day out, in terms of their goals, in terms of specific things like exercise and nutrition, and investing in relationships and kindness. It's returning to the goodness within our nature. And second, to help people become more realistic. At some point, and you know this, at some point in my course, I let people know that that there is actually a secret to happiness, and that secret has to do with actually I tell them there are three secrets to happiness, and the three secrets are: first, reality; second, reality; and third, reality. Because if we learn to be in touch with reality, with our internal reality, for example, of what is important to me, what matters to me most, what are my priorities, and the external reality of, wow, look at how many kind people there are around me. Look at how much goodness there is in the world. If we become aware of this reality, that's when we maximize, fulfill our potential for happiness.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say that I am so thankful for, inviting me to be part of those projects, because we see people from all over the world who are living better lives. They report living better lives, and also doing amazing projects in their communities, in their organizations, and in the world. So it lifts me up, it really lifts me up, and it fills me with hope. So I thank you for that, Tal, very much. And
Thank
so, we have the certificate in happiness studies starting February 1st. And then in March, we have a new cohort of the Masters in Happiness Studies. So if you are interested, any of you are interested, please let us know. We'll be very happy to answer any questions you might have, and more happy even if you join our community. But I wanted to see, is it okay? We have 10 more minutes to, to answer a couple of questions. Is that okay for you, Tal?
Oh, please. It can be longer than 10 minutes.
Oh, wonderful. Well, it's getting to the time where you wake up. So maybe you will not go back.
We can go all night as far as I'm concerned.
Perfect. So please, anybody that has a question, you can raise your hand and we will allow you to speak. You can raise your hand. You have an option in the chat box or below in the menu. If any of you have any questions, that will be wonderful. Carlos, please.
Buenas. Hay verdaderamente bastante información sobre la felicidad, pero a veces uno se confunde si eso es un proceso, si es un estado, si es un resultado. Entonces quisiera que el doctor Ben-Shahar nos concretara exactamente qué es la felicidad. ¿Es una emoción, es una trascendencia o es todos los anteriores? Muchas gracias.
Thank you for this question, Carlos. It's a very important one. And it's a question that needs to be asked at all levels of learning happiness, because many experts in the field of happiness are not aware of this. And specifically what I'm referring to is research by Iris Moss. Iris Moss is a psychologist in Colorado that has pointed out to a very important phenomenon, and that is the following. So Carlos, if you wake up in the morning and you say to yourself the following thing, happiness is very important for me. Happiness is a value. I want to be happy. I'm going to pursue happiness and become happier. You're actually going to become less happy. So if you value happiness highly, if happiness matters to you a great deal, and you say, I'm going to choose to be happy and pursue happiness, you're actually going to be less happy. Now, that's a problem. You know, Arlen has just been talking about how valuable happiness is, how it will make you healthier, better relationships, more successful. We all want to be happier. It's a good thing. It feels good. But if I value it and it's important to me, then I will become less happy. How do I resolve this problem? Well, here is how to do it. The key is, rather than pursuing happiness directly, we need to pursue it indirectly. Let me explain. Let's say you go out and it's the middle of the day. You go out to the street and the sun is shining and you look up at the sun. What will happen to you? You will burn your eyes. It will hurt you. Looking at the sun directly hurts. However, what if you take, let's say, a prism and you break the sunlight, and the sunlight breaks into the colors of the rainbow? Well, then you can look at the sunlight indirectly and enjoy it. So looking at it directly hurts. Looking at it indirectly is enjoyable, is pleasurable. It's the same with happiness. Pursuing it directly, saying to yourself, I'm going to become happier. Happiness is important for me. That actually hurts. But if you take happiness and break it down into its elements, you know, break it down into the metaphorical colors of the rainbow, then you can actually enjoy it. Now, the question is, Carlos, what are these colors of the rainbow? What are these elements that make up happiness? And this is where the study of happiness is important. We divide happiness into 5 elements. We call them the SPIRE elements, S-P-I-R-E. Spiritual well-being, physical well-being, intellectual well-being, relational well-being, and emotional well-being. And it's these elements together that make up happiness as a whole. It's like these colors of the rainbow is what together makes up sunlight. And if I pursue each one of these colors, each one of these elements, I can increase my happiness without decreasing it by pursuing it directly. And it's the very things that Arlen and I spoke about, whether it's taking time to do things that are important to us, that are meaningful to us, that we care about, that's spiritual well-being, meaning, or whether it's exercising regularly or eating healthfully, or whether it's learning new things, or whether it's investing in my relationships, in the people that are important to me, or whether it's expressing gratitude. These are all ways of indirectly pursuing happiness, enjoying the colors of the rainbow rather than being hurt by direct sunlight.
Thank you, Tal. I think you also answered Enrique Rivas, who was saying, so the value of happiness is directed to the balance of well-being and well-being of what we do, get, and enjoy. So I think you answered that question.
Yeah, yes, and the thing is about finding balance, it's not always possible to do everything. But what we want to do is consistently focus on some things. Whether it's, okay, this year I'm going to start exercising 3 times a week. Yes, I have a long list of things that I want to do, but I'm going to choose exercise. And I'm going to do that consistently 3 times a week. Or I'm going to commit to spending 1 extra hour with friends this week, this year, a week. And you do it consistently, that will increase your levels of happiness. So small changes can and do make a big difference if we apply them consistently.
Thank you. Orieta, por favor.
Buenas noches. Entonces, con relación a lo que están diciendo, ¿sería posible afirmar que la felicidad es una decisión? O sea, yo puedo decidir ser feliz y trabajar indirectamente para lograrlo en esos 5 ámbitos que has dicho, a pesar de mis circunstancias, a pesar de que algunas cosas no vayan tan bien o de que tenga alguna pérdida económica de algún ser querido. ¿Es una decisión la felicidad? ¿Yo puedo decidir ser feliz? Gracias.
Yeah, such an important question, Orieta. Yes and no is the answer. And let me explain. Yes, at every moment in our life, we do have a choice. Right now, in this second, I have a choice. Do I think about something that I'm grateful for, like, say, my daughter? Or do I focus on the fact that I still haven't completed the project and that I had an argument with a friend? Well, I have a choice. Do I focus on something that makes me happy, or do I focus on something that brings me down? So this is why, yes, it is a choice. At the same time, Orieta, there are life circumstances. I will never go to a person who's hungry, who doesn't have enough, money to feed their family, and say to them, oh, just forget about that. Just focus on happiness, because it's a choice. There are certain realities, certain experiences in life, such as what you said, loss, where the appropriate emotion is pain, where the right thing to do is to learn to embrace and experience that unhappiness and that pain. And at the same time, to remember that we also have a choice. And maybe not right now, because maybe right now the right thing to do, the right choice to make, is to cry and to be sad and to be hurt. And then to choose maybe to go for a walk, to talk to a friend, and to do things that will increase my levels of well-being. But happiness doesn't, or a happy life doesn't mean being happy all the time. It's not possible, it's not realistic, it's not realistic. Remember, reality, 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 and it's unhealthy. So we need to understand, when is it appropriate and when is it not? Just like sometimes, it is appropriate to take the easy route, to have that fast food, to watch that, easy movie. And sometimes it's appropriate to put a little bit more effort and to maybe try and read Aristotle, or to maybe invest in that gourmet meal. And in the same way, sometimes it is appropriate to shed a tear and cry and be sad. And sometimes it is appropriate to just choose to do something that will make me happy right now.
Thank you, Tal. I would like to add something that I learned from Maria Sira, which says that, we can search for a paradise within, even in hell. We can be living a very difficult situation, And we can also choose to look at, who's helping me in this very, who's with me in this dark moment of my life. So, there is also this intentionality to search for the good, even in dark times. And I think that's one of the tools that are very, very important in building resilience. But of course, grounded in reality, with never saying that, we ought to be happy all the time without any context, or thinking that it's everything within us when we live at war, when there is war in our country, or we're suffering from lack of freedom, for example. So that's very important. Thank you so much. And so there is, I don't see any other hands up.
Yeah,
but
Martha has her hand up.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I couldn't see that.
Hola, buenas noches, muchas gracias. Y un placer escuchar a nuestro invitado, que yo lo vi por primera vez en Ciudad de las Ideas. Maravilloso. Y qué gusto. Gracias por este espacio. Rápido la pregunta. ¿No podría ser la autorrealización ese espectro que hace ese arco iris de colores cuando buscamos la autorrealización? Es el filtro. Porque a mí la felicidad se me hace que está lastimado el término, la felicidad confundida con el placer inmediato del que ya hablaron. Entonces, por un lado es esa pregunta. Y otro, ¿en dónde está la frontera para no caer en esta felicidad individualista? Y en dónde queda el valor comunitario, el construir una felicidad en grupo, en comunidad. Muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Yeah, thank you, Martha. Two great questions. So first of all, you ask, is happiness pleasure? Just today, when we discussed Aristotle with our students, this is exactly the conversation that he had 2,500 years ago. That's why it's so important to read the great works, the great texts. And Aristotle said, hey, happiness is not just about pleasure. However, this is how most people today use it. They say, for example, oh, I was on the beach, I was so happy, or I had an ice cream that made me so happy. That gave you pleasure, and that's great, wonderful, but that's not the same as happiness. And this is, relates to Orietta's question. I could have gone through a very hard day at work, didn't enjoy much pleasure, and yet I did something important and meaningful. And overall, I'm leading a happy life. Happiness is much more than pleasure. Yes, some of it is a part of it. That's one color of the rainbow. But there are many other colors. Happiness is also about a sense of meaning and purpose. And here I get to your second question. Happiness is very much about a community. In fact, the #1 predictor of happiness is our relationships. It's the quality time that we spend with people we care about and who care about us. It's how much I invest in other people. And that will determine my happiness much more so than that ice cream. And again, I'm not against that ice cream, in moderation. At the same time, I am against spending so much time on the urgent things that I don't have time to invest in my relationships, in my community, which is important, which matters. So thinking about those colors of the rainbow, whether they are pleasure, whether they are a sense of meaning in my life, whether they are my community, my relationship, whether that color is my intellectual development, which is an important part of happiness, focusing on the different colors, finding that balance, as Pedro was talking about earlier, is what will lead to happiness, is what will lead us to the metaphorical light.
Thank you very much, Tal. I'm not able to see if there are any other hands up. So they're not?
I don't see any.
So I would like to ask this question that Maria Jimena wrote that says, you know, how much does our self-esteem and our thoughts and beliefs have an effect on us achieving our goals, success in life, and our happiness?
So thank you for asking this question. I actually wrote my my PhD work on self-esteem and its relationship to happiness. So I'm glad you have all night, because I have a lot to say about this. So what is the relationship? So first of all, there is a very strong relationship between these two variables, and it makes sense because if I have poor self-esteem, in other words, if I think poorly of myself, it's going to affect my life as a whole. If I think well of myself, if I have high self-esteem, obviously it's going to affect the rest of my life. Before I answer this question, I want to make a very important distinction. High self-esteem does not mean being arrogant. On the contrary, it's the person who is arrogant, who shows off constantly. That person has very low self-esteem, and that's why they need to show off and be arrogant. The person with a high self-esteem is the most humble. So having made this distinction, the question is, if there is such an important relationship between self-esteem and happiness, if we know that self-esteem affects our life so much, how do we increase it? And here we get to something which for many people is counterintuitive. Because most people think the more you succeed, the more positive feedback you receive from others, from the world, from yourself, the higher your self-esteem will be. But actually, that doesn't turn out to be the actual case. Rather, the way we increase self-esteem is by trying things, by experimenting with things, by coping, by putting ourselves on the line, by putting effort. Arlen, you talked about this a lot, by putting effort into things. And it's through that, through coping, through effort, through hard work, through putting ourselves on the line. This is how we develop self-esteem, much more so than by actually succeeding. Yes, success is nice and it feels good. But in the long term, it's by trying, by effort, that we increase our self-esteem. Why? Because we develop self-esteem by observing ourselves. And if we behave in a way that people with self-esteem behave, we actually develop self-esteem. How do people with high self-esteem behave? They work hard, they try things, they don't run away from challenges. And if we see ourselves coping rather than running away from challenges, trying hard, putting effort, then we derive the conclusion about ourselves, oh, I have high self-esteem, our self-esteem increases. So the point is to identify those things that are important to you. Take a step back, as we talked about earlier. Take a step back. What matters to me? And then we invest in it, even if it's hard, even if it's challenging. Actually doing it, that in the long term will increase our self-esteem. No big surprise here. The things that make us happy are also the things that increase our self-esteem.
Thank you so much, Tao, for shedding light into this issue. So what are your closing remarks in terms of the net value of happiness?
So, going back to Carlos's question, just saying to ourselves, I want to be happy. It's important for me to be happy. I'm going to pursue happy this year. I'm going to make the choice to be happy, that may backfire. That may not be helpful. However, if I sit down, take the time to think about what are the things that matter to me? What are the things that will lead to more happiness? And make that list of things, and then choose not many, but a few, 1 or 2 things that I'm going to implement in my life, to invest effort in, and then doing it. Creating a reminder to do it, doing it over and over again until it becomes a ritual, a habit. This is the way to attain higher levels of well-being. Small changes consistently applied lead to happiness.
Thank you so much, Tal. And I think we can close by saying, that happiness is a journey, and happiness is not something that you can say, I got it and it's gonna stay with me the whole time and I'm gonna be happy all the time. But, we become active agents and active builders of our own house, inner house, of our own lives. So thank you so much for really waking up to meet with us today. I am beyond grateful. Gracias a todos por conectarse. And I would like to share with people a nice video that we have about the certificate program, which starts February 1st. It would be a pleasure for us if you join this journey with us. We learn from each other and we learn a lot about ourselves. Thank you so much. And I want to thank, while Gigi and Glavers put the video, I want to thank them, Gigi, Glavers, Victor, Ivan. There is a whole team behind us, and we're very, very grateful for your help. You make this rock. So thank you so much. And we can go ahead with the video. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Arlen. And this moment is a special moment, because at this moment, there is the potential that exists within our students to spread this change and to bring about a happiness revolution. A peaceful revolution that will increase levels of well-being around the world. A revolution that will generate not just more well-being, not just more happiness, but also more health and more goodness, more generosity, more kindness. This is about making the world a better place. This is about making a meaningful difference. And when I think about it, I know that this is the moment. Right now, right here, together.
Pues muchísimas gracias, y van a recibir, quienes estén interesados, la información y un descuento especial por haber participado en este webinar. Y de verdad, muchas gracias. Acérquense a nuestro instituto, estamos aquí para ayudarles en sus organizaciones, en su vida, y nos da mucho gusto de verdad que sean parte de la familia del Happiness Studies Academy y del Instituto de Bienestar Integral. Muchísimas gracias y buenas noches. Thank you so much, Tal.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You can go back to sleep or wake up, finally wake up fully.
Now it's time for you to go to sleep, right?
That's right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Take care.